Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from Group 7. Welcome to our presentation, and today we are going to discuss about cultural differences in communication. The content of our presentation consists of the first definition of cross-cultural communication, second, the importance of understanding cultural differences in communication, third, barrier of cross-cultural communication, then how to deal with cultural differences in communication, and the last is how to communicate well with people from other cultures. I'm Ina Shahyan Novembrilianti, and my student number is 71, and the first material will be presented by me. Okay, according to Mona Baker, 1992, culture is an abstract or construct idea which is associated with religious, belief, social custom, and kind of food. According to Pearson and Nelson, 2000, communication is the purpose of understanding and sharing the meaning. So, the definition of cross-cultural communication is a communication between people who have differences in any condition, something like age, nationality, ethnicity, race, gender, and so on. It means that it is how we as people belonging to different cultures communicate with each other. For example, communication cultures of Malaysia and Indonesia are different. In Indonesia and Malaysia both have Malay language, but the two countries have different uses of Malay language itself. In Indonesia, only the western part of Indonesia and Kalimantan still use Malay language, but in other they use Indonesian and regional language. While in Malaysia, Malay being the first language and English as the second language. Okay, the next material will be presented by Elva.
My name is Alva Novelia and my last student number is 47. In this occasion, I would like to present about the importance of understanding cultural differences in communication. As an English student, we have to know that communication has cultural differences. So, why understanding cultural differences in communications is important? There are several reasons. And the first one is giving an insight or knowledge about cultural differences. Knowledge or insight into different culture will be useful later in establishing communication with partners who have different cultural backgrounds with us, so that what we will be discussed can be adjusted to the circumstances or cultural background of each as needed. And the second one is developing communication skill. By understanding the cultural differences, we will be able to develop communication skills easier. This is also the tips to improve communication skill effectively, because every person has understood other respective cultural backgrounds. So the information and messages and sorry, so the information and the messages conveyed can be understood well too. And the third one is understanding different body language in each culture. Communication doesn't only take place by verbal communication, but also through body language. Therefore, understanding cultural differences in communication is very important, because every culture must have different patterns of body language. Sometimes, gesture in one environment can be interpreted differently in another. This condition can threaten communication to become bad. So, understanding cultural differences, including body language, in communication is very important. And the fourth one is preventing communication barriers. By understanding cultural differences in communication, we can understand every different social behavior for each person. It can prevent barriers to communication in various cultural environment. And the fifth point is communication becomes more efficient. By understanding cultural differences, it can help us to make communication more efficient. When our partners or friends understand their respective cultural background, it doesn't take a long time to make decisions. Communication will run more efficiently. I think that's all from me. Thank you. And the next material will be presented by Rofi Kusumadewi.
I'm Rofi Kusumadewi. My SID is 44. In this slide, I'm going to explain about the cultural barriers in communication. First is language. Different cultures always play a role in language development in a community group. So, when people feel comfortable in communicating using their own language, and then they have to work harder when they want to learn new language. Because in communication, understanding the meaning of words is the main very important thing. However, the barriers occur not only because of the language differences, but also because of the variety of dialects. For example, is in Japanese language. We know that there are various dialects that have developed in our community, especially in Japanese people, such as Banyumas, Surakarta, and then Muria dialects. If one communicator is not aware of the exact meaning, so it can create misunderstanding that can lead to a conflict of ideas. The next is stereotype and prejudice. Stereotyping is the process of creating a picture of a whole culture, so it can be positive or negative stereotype. Positive stereotype will create a frame of reference in people's mind in a cultural context. So what is on the mind may be different with the reality. Meanwhile, the negative stereotypes create prejudice and it can trigger judgmental attitudes. For the example, I have a story that I have read before from a blog. The blogger is a French, but right now she lives in the UK. When she was moving to the UK, one of her French friends told her that British people never invite other people to have dinner together with them, which is like a common social activity for French people. But then she told her French friend that her neighbors often invited her to have dinner together with them, with their families. So based on this case, we can never predict someone's behavior based on her or his nationality. Okay, the third barriers is cultural norms and values. Every culture has values, meanings, and norms that are different from other cultures. In communication case, the appropriate amount of someone's receptivity is also different, and it is usually reflected to their nonverbal responses. For example, in some culture, it is important to make eye contact because it means we value the existence of other people who are talking to us. But in some other cultures, the eye contact is considered rude and impolite. The next barriers is ethnocentrism. We all have a natural tendency to see other cultures through our own perspectives. Ethnocentrism views one's culture as superior to others, so the culture of other people is evaluated and judged
based on their cultural standard, so that it can create misconceptions that can lead to hostility. When communicating, ethnocentrism makes people from other cultures feel undervalued or underestimated. And when people feel like that, they tend to be reluctant to communicate, so it can make the communication becomes unproductive. Well, the last barriers is beliefs and religions. The fear of the unknown is a big contributor to creating communication barriers. This is very common when we encounter new or different spiritual beliefs and practices. Sometimes we feel uncomfortable in communicating with people from other religions because of the assumptions about other people's beliefs and opinions. One of the main communication barriers from the religious aspect is the lack of knowledge or information about religions and other belief systems that are different from ours. And due to the diversity of religious and spiritual beliefs, people who identify themselves as religious or spiritual may have very different opinions about what is and is not appropriate to do in life. So these differences can affect how people communicate with one another. So that's all from me. The next material will be delivered by Irfa Lavia.
Hello everyone, my name is Irfa Lavia. My last student number is 39. So in the previous slide, my friend has explained about barriers of intercultural communications. So now I will explain about how to deal with cultural differences in communication. So there are 5 points that I will explain to you. The first is use mutual language and signs. It means that when we talk to people who have different cultures, for example, when we're talking to strangers, we can combine verbal and non-verbal communications so that there is no miscommunication between us and another person we are talking to, and it is also aims to make what we mean more specific and clear to understand. The second is accept and adapt to different cultures. When we talk to people who have culture differences, we have to tolerate each other. We must be able to adapt their culture. It means that we adapt ourselves to their communication culture, so we understand that there are differences that we must respect each other. The third, understand the communication context. In this case, when we communicate with people who have cultural differences, we must know what kind of situation we are in and with whom we are communicating. So the choice of words or diction that we use must also be accordance with the situations. Fourth is avoid stereotypes. As we know that stereotypes are perceptions which can be interpreted in general as opinions, assumptions, feelings about other people, other ethnic groups, other nations, or something, whether negative or positive. And why should we avoid it when communicating with people of different culture? This is because stereotypes based on incomplete truths and often tend to be untrue. Therefore, stereotypes must be avoided to keep us from conflict that could be happen. And the last point is learn about other cultures and their norms. In communication, besides having to understand our own culture, we also have to understand other people's cultures, because when we understand other people's cultures, communication, it makes us more open.
because cultural differences are what will make a person more accepting, changing negative stereotypes in other people's culture into positive stereotypes. So that's all from me. The next material will be given by Friska.
Okay, I am Friska Putri Agilia and I would like to explain about how to communicate culturally. So there are three things that you can do. The first one is adapting a flexible culture. Before going to other countries, try to learn their culture first. Be respectful and tolerant if there are some differences between our and their culture. We have to expect differences so that we don't have to experience too much culture shock. And when we talk to them, we have to be patient because they might not understand what we say at once. And it is better to be upfront if there are some difficulties in communicating with them so we can find a way to solve this problem. And the second one is communicate verbally. If it is possible, try to learn their language first, at least the basic one. And if you cannot, then you have to use dominant language such as English to communicate with them. And it is better to avoid slang and profanity. You can speak slowly if it is necessary to make sure that everything is clear. And the last one is using nonverbal communication. You can start by using formal posture when you talk to them. And it is also important to learn about their rules regarding to eye contact, personal space, touching, and even facial expression. So this explanation leads us to the conclusion. It is important to understand cultural differences in communication because communication is the most important thing in the society. We can share our thoughts or ideas through communication. By understanding the culture, it can make us look more intelligent because we can respect the differences between our and their culture. It also can minimize misunderstanding between us and our interlocutors. So that's all our presentation. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.